Have you ever wondered what a 20-year-old game would look like? Yeah, absolute fucking cringe fest. But aside from the awkwardness that shows on the surface, there is a story worth looking into beneath it. If you by any chance never have played or even know about this game, let me share a bit of a background to get you into speed. Final Fantasy X is a JRPG developed and published by Square, now commonly known as Square Enix, as the 10th main entry in the Final Fantasy series. Originally released in 2001 for PlayStation 2, the game was re-released as Final Fantasy X/X-2 HD Remaster for PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita in 2013, for PlayStation 4 in 2015, Windows in 2016, Switch and Xbox One in 2019. Even though the latest game of the series came out in 2016, this game keeps on getting releases on newer consoles. Some may call it a lack of progression from Square's part, but I believe that there is a reason why it keeps getting re-released, and why we keep playing the same damn game. Fun fact, Final Fantasy X wasn't even planned to be a Final Fantasy game. In an interview with Siliconera, Final Fantasy X/X-2 producer Yoshinori Kitase shared some of the original concepts discussed during the game's development in preparation for the release. The early idea started with a concept entitled 17, and the theme of the story was that a person would reach the end of life at 17 years of age. That theme of inevitable death was carried over to become Yuna's fate in Final Fantasy X, as she was on a journey to fight Sin. Enough of background talk. If I'm to get the 10 minutes mark for the video, we should start by talking about the game. First off, the story.
Listen to my story. This may be our last chance.
Just like any other main entries from the franchise, this one tells of a new and different story. It's not a sequel or a continuation of the previous game. I don't know why they keep doing this as Square. In the world of Spira, there was an ancient war 1,000 years prior to the start of the game, between Bevel and Zanarkand. Zanarkand's ruler, knowing his city's eventual demise, tries to safeguard its memory. Yevon's people became the faith to create this manifestation, and Yevon made himself the core of a powerful monster known as Sin to protect it. Sin knows only one thing: to destroy. However, through the machination of Yevon's daughter, Yunalesca, Bevel established a religious faith built on atonement and sacrifice to conceal the spiral of death that runs throughout Spira's history. This process involves Yunalesca teaching a summoner a ritual known as the Final Summoning, which would give Spira a brief relief from Sin's terror in a period known as the Calm. Though the final Aeon can destroy Sin, it will be reborn once more, thus creating a never-ending loop of destruction. This, kids, is why we shouldn't have wars. Enter Tidus, or whatever you want to call him. A renowned blitzball player and son of the famous blitzball star Jecht. During a blitzball tournament, the city is attacked by Sin, and it takes Tidus to the world of Spira. Upon arriving in Spira, Tidus is rescued by some passerby, but then Sin attacks again. He is then awakened in the tropical island of Besaid, where he meets Waka, captain of the local blitzball team. Waka then introduces Tidus to Yuna, a young summoner about to go on a pilgrimage to obtain the final Aeon and defeat Sin with her guardians, Lulu, Kimahri, and Waka. Tidus joins the party and they travel across Spira to gather Aeons. Tidus then meets Auron, a familiar face who reveals that 10 years ago, Auron and Jecht guarded Yuna's late father Braska to defeat Sin, but then Jack became the new entity of the monster. As Yuna's party continues their pilgrimage, adding members such as Oren and Riku, Tidus' relationship with Yuna grows stronger, evident from this scene. And then there's this bit where the group encounters this guy over and over again, but he's a douche and he wants to destroy Spira. That's all. Soon afterward, Sin attacked, separating Yuna and the others. Tidus then learned that summoners die after summoning the final Aeon.
Was I the only one who didn't know? Tell me why! Why were you hiding it? Why didn't I know?
We weren't hiding it.
It was just too hard to say.
Leading to his desire to find a way to defeat Sin while keeping Yuna alive. The group then heads towards the ruins of Zanarkand to meet Yuna Leska. Shortly before arriving, Tidus learns that he, Jack, and the Zanarkand they hail from are summoned from entities akin to Aeons based on the original Zanarkand and its people. Zanarkand survivors of the ancient war became the Faith, so that they could use their memories of Zanarkand to create a new city in their image, removed from the reality of Spira. The Faith hints that the group will have to face Yevon in order to put an end to the cycle, which will ultimately stop the Fates from dreaming and causing everyone from the dream Zanarkand to disappear. All of a sudden, the role was reversed. The mentality of losing Yuna was no longer present since it is Tidus who will disappear at the end of his journey. Once they reach Zanarkand, Yuna Leska tells the group that the final Aeon is created from the faith of one close to the summoner. After defeating Sin, the final Aeon kills the summoner and transforms it into a new Sin, which has caused its cycle of rebirth to continue. The group are against using the final Aeon due to the futile sacrifices it carries, and the fact that Sin would still be reborn. Any hope of attaining the final Aeon is then lost, due to the group defeating Yuna Leska and ending the ritual of sacrifice to attain the final Aeon forever. After the fight, the group learns that Yevon is behind Sin's cycle of rebirth. This leads the group to vanquish Yevon and defeat Sin once and for all. Finally, Tidus, along with the dreams of the Fates, start to disappear, alongside the faith that stopped dreaming.
Yuna, I have to go. I'm sorry I couldn't show you Zanarkand. Goodbye.
Hey!
We're gonna see you again!
Yuna!
And thus, the eternal calm has started. It might be confusing at first, but if you tie in the backstory from earlier, it all makes perfect sense. A bittersweet ending to the overarching narrative. The story revolves around a band of misfits trying to save the world, but in my opinion, I found my attention stolen over and over again by the relationship between the characters, mainly Tidus and Yuna, a love story that was already doomed from the first time they laid eyes at each other. Yeah, there was some awkward moments, because this dude, he is just the pinnacle of cringe, the incarnation, the epitome, the manifestation. Holy hell, I can talk for days about how cringe this dude is. Aside from that, the irony speaks for itself. Yuna, the summoner who is destined to sacrifice herself to defeat Sin, encounters Tidus, a stranger who basically fell out of the sky. developing feelings for him, knowing her fate in the end. No one was actively trying to hide the end of her journey. No one has the courage to say it to him. They all let Tidus learn the harsh truth for himself. Just as one of the guardians said,
It was just too hard to say.
given this information of how painful it is to realize that in the end of the journey, he will lose her. He kept the news that the fate brings him a secret. Just as the others kept the truth away from him about the summoner's fate. He will have to disappear in order for Spira to reach the eternal calm. The dynamics between the sacrifices both of them possess is the main attention of the narrative. The world they live in is an endless loop of terror, and the only way for them to stay happy without having to endure a sleepless night is by a sacrifice. Both of them are in a journey of sacrifice, sacrificing everything that they have. Yet in between these steps of sacrifices, they gather the small amount of happiness in between their journey that they can master. A handful of bliss, a pinch of joy, knowing that the end that is waiting for them will take their breath away. Literally. Just as breathtaking as this soundtrack. The man, the myth, the legend is back to work on the music for this entry. Yes, Nobuo Uematsu. Uematsu joined Square in 1985 and composed his soundtrack with Cruise Chaser Blasted. What the frick is this game? Cruise Chaser Blasty in 1986. Shortly after, he met Hironobu Sakaguchi. Uematsu and Sakaguchi collaborated on what was originally to be Sakaguchi's last contribution for Square, Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy's popularity sparked Uematsu's career in video game music, and he would go on to compose music for over 30 titles, most prominently the subsequent games in the Final Fantasy series. Final Fantasy X marks the first time regular series composer Nobuo Uematsu has had any assistance in composing the score for a game in the main series. His fellow composers for Final Fantasy X were Masashi Hamauzu and Junya Nakano, and these three mixed together is like match made in heaven. The recurring music played throughout sets the mood of the scenes accordingly, the brief reprieve of their journey, the thought of the end of the journey, the faith to keep going, is all there and dynamically intertwined with the scenes they're accompanying. Just listen. That song has dozens of renditions throughout your playthrough, and in every rendition that you visit, it's all fucking beautiful. Here's another. The pain, the suffering, the journey. It's all in there. And I'd be lying to say that Uematsu did a decent job, because that's just fucking incredible. I got nothing else to say for the music. It's up there in some of the best ones. At first, I didn't even want to put this section in because there is nothing to talk about. The battles itself is pretty mediocre owing to the classic turn-based RPG format that we used to play. There are some interesting bosses and how to deal with them, but that's about it. I played this game when I was 10 and got to the second to last boss and didn't finish it, and it's all because I was dire to see the end credit. I didn't care much for the battle system and just wanted more of the story. So I was underleveled at the time and my characters were not strong enough. Playing it again 10 years wiser, I realized that my mistake was at the sphere grid. So for all of you who missed this game and never played it, the game has a different leveling system at the time and it's called the sphere grid. So basically sphere grid is the means by which your character learn non-overdrive abilities and their statistics like HP, MP, defense, attack, etc. Each character's star set 1 place on the board and through gaining AP in battle may move along the board picking up stat increases and learning battle abilities as they go. Kinda like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but more complicated. This is not enough to just simply move to a node, you must activate it with one of 4 kinds of common spheres: power, mana, speed, and ability, which drops via the monsters you'll be facing. And one thing I did wrong was picking up this skill for Titus. Yeah, flee. Don't ever pick up flee. Cause if you flee, you're a little bitch. The game equips you with 7 different characters to utilize in your journey. There's Titus, the quick and agile, speedy physical attacker with some buff support. Wakka, the accurate sharpshooter with a fucking ball as a fucking weapon who could also deal some fucking debuffs to the enemy. Lulu, the black mage who deals elemental magic damage. Yuna, a healer who can also summon a fucking dragon. Auron, the 9999 damage dealing tank. Riku, the thief. And last but certainly least, Kimahri, the I don't know what to do with my life furry. Look, he doesn't have a clear path in the sphere grid. Okay, so what the fuck am I supposed to do about him? The bosses in the game is fairly diverse as well, providing a good bit of challenge to go through every time you encounter them. Some of them includes Seymour, oh, and Seymour. I cannot believe we have to beat that guy 4 times over. At about 80% completion, you'll unlock the ability to board the airship and go to every location in the map, even some hidden ones. Here, the game actually opens up in order for you to prepare yourself for the final battle, getting the Ultima weapons, grinding for levels, stocking up on items, and all that stuff. There are also side activities like things to do in the Calmlands, capturing monsters, chocobo racing, and also Blitzball, who no one plays aside from the tournament game. Aside from that, I feel like it's best to conclude this video. Final Fantasy X is a solid game with a great storyline and awkward moments sprinkled throughout. But in retrospect, I kinda feel like the awkward moments are sweeteners to the game's underlying tone of sacrifices. Strangely enough, it made me enjoy the journey even more. Accompanied with great soundtrack from Uematsu himself, this game is just a blast to play despite its decent gameplay. I enjoyed playing it for what it is and I'm glad I have experienced it. And once again, let me remind you that this is a 20-year-old game. If you do like the genre and for some reason have never played it, it is a worthwhile game to pick up. If you don't, maybe it's a great stepping point to enter. Some of the clips that I used for this video is taken from DanSGO8's channel. Check him out if you haven't already. I guess that's all from me. Stay safe out there.